Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords. Today we got Star Adventurer right here. It's a great space opera RPG system if you want a nice clean set of rules. It's about 34, I think, or 36 pages long, 36 pages I think it is. And it's only like $9.99 in print. You can get it from Spectre Press. And be sure to check out on the Red Room store, because this you get at drive-through. But if you want, my PDF series, the Pundit Files, is at the Red Room store, and one of the latest issues that we've gotten so far, though I believe today there will be a new one coming out if my editor gets it out on time, is the Pundit Files Random Space Opera Worlds. And that is actually meant to be the first kind of glimpse of the setting of my Star Adventurer game setting that I've been kind of working on over a while, which is called Sons of Heaven. And it's basically kind of a post-civilizational collapse space campaign. Like I originally described it as the fall of the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age collapse in space. But anyways, be sure to check it out. You can only get it at the Red Room, and it only costs about $3.50. Okay. And speaking of Spectre Press, you see here's the Old School Companion 1. They're coming out with the Old School Companion 3 eventually. I was told today that that is the next that they are beginning work on it. So it is still going to probably take quite some time, right? So it's like 6 months to a year, but there will finally be the Old School Companion 3. Old School Companion 1 was a bunch of supplementary material that you can use in your campaign to make it more medieval authentic. It obviously is compatible with Lion and Dragon, but you can also use it with most of the tools in there are usable in pretty much any OSR game. And Old School Companion 2 was a set of 26 medieval authentic adventures, mostly sandbox adventures, that again you can use in any OSR type system. Old School Companion 3 is going to be the second part of 1. In other words, it's going to be including even more medieval authentic stuff material that you will find useful in any of your games. But, well, that'll be coming eventually, but it will be coming. Also, work continues on the omnibus edition of Lion and Dragon and Dark Albion. And I'm still thinking that's going to work out, so it looks like a good plan. Now, on to the topic of today. So, first off, if you haven't seen it yet, I mean, you might have seen this already. It's been all over social media. It's caused a lot of controversy. There is this picture that is taken from the new core books of D&D. Like many pictures, it's caused some controversy. And this one in particular is a picture that looks like it's a group of adventurers sitting around a table having a meal. It looks tremendously like something out of a stock photo. And, you know, people have been commenting on how so much of what's in the D&D books in terms of art now, in these new D&D books, in terms of art, looks like they were, you know, like Getty Images stock photos. Like, you know, those stock photos are all over the internet in any article and things like that. That somebody just took that photo, traced over it in some kind of fantasy version, you know, replaced whatever, you know, whatever's necessary with some fantasy stuff. But basically they're inspired by the poses and the you know, because they have very particular, stock photos have a very particular style to them, right? They are posed in a certain way, and that's what you see in the new D&D books. And this one is no exception. It looks totally like a group of friends at a bar, except it's medieval all of a sudden, and it's got medieval stuff in it. And if you haven't seen this photo that I'm talking about, this is the photo that has the tacos and the sushi. Okay, in good old medieval times, there's the taco and there's the sushi plates, which is the main cause of the controversy. If you haven't heard of this photo, you can pause this video, go to on my channel to the community section, and I'm going to put up, before this video airs, that image, which hopefully will be allowed because I think it's fair use. If it gets taken down, it gets taken down. But if not, you should check there. It's going to either be at the top if you're watching this when this video comes out, or it's going to be close to the top. Or if you're watching this like 6 years, if it's 2031 now, and you're watching this video, well, you're going to have to go looking for it. Look for it at the same date, roughly, as this video. All right. So that is the image. I hope you've all seen it. I hope you've paused. Now you came back and you've all seen it. If not, well, sorry. That is the image that has caused the controversy of the day on Twitter and on social media in general. And of course, I'm right in the thick of it, which is good. It's a nice change. I like the fact that nowadays I have like these alternating chances to be embroiled in controversy. Like, I just spent the past week having to fight the Bro SR and their influencer cronies, and as they were attacking me, which was, that was particularly unjust because I wasn't, like, they were actually literally lying about me, right? They were trying to present it as if I was the one that was attacking the shadow darking of the OSR or something like that was me and not Venger. And it was me that was calling the creator Shadow Dark woke when it wasn't. It was the Red Room. And I had actually made a video defending it. And they all knew. But they know that I'm more famous than the Red Room or Venger, and that I have more desperately fanatical haters, right? But anyways, meanwhile, this week, it's the left wing that are pissed at me. Because I pointed out about anachronism and what that really means. On a thread, and now they're furious. Okay, so this was the standard policy. You've got this image, fantasy, like D&D, classic Western style medieval fantasy. People with plate mail, swords, axes, dwarves, elves. There are some weirdos there because it's 5th edition. So there's like, I don't know if they're like weird colored elves or if they're meant to be tieflings or whatever. There's a halfling that may be a halfling or might be a gnome. I don't know. But in any case, right, it's classic fantasy. And the meal that they're having, see now, there's flagons of ale, there's the roast beast, that's the centerpiece, and, all this sort of stuff. Everything is medieval, except that they have thrown in there a bunch of diversity elements. So they've thrown in stuff like... the main one that they've thrown in is this taco. It's very clearly a hard shell taco. It could be no other thing, right? Because there's a bunch of people that were saying, well, no, because, what do you know? This isn't like the real world. This is like some other setting. So this could just be, like a lot of cultures. Every culture has like things made with bread and then with meat and vegetables in them. And that could just be something from that culture. And I'm like, yeah, but that is a taco. That's not just anything. That is literally a taco, right? And then they're like, well, what does that mean? Well, because, a taco, there's no thing with bread and meat and vegetables in it that looks exactly like a hard shell taco. Like in our society, in our world, on our planet, that was developed, and I believe it was the northern area of Mexico. It's almost more American than Mexican. The hard shell taco was invented there. It is a thing with, technically grain, meat, and vegetables. They're all surrounded by the grain component, which in this case is a hard shell taco. And, all other cultures in the world have unleavened bread, or stuff like that. Could theoretically make a hard shell. They have meat and they have vegetables. None of them have made something that even looks resembling that, right? So this was not something that could be described as anything other than a specifically Mexican plate, okay? A specifically Mexican dish. And right nearby, there was a perfect plate of maki sushi, right? So a sushi plate. That again, like that's not, you can say, oh, well, lots of cultures eat raw fish. Yeah, there are a lot of cultures that do. None of them make it look in that particular way except one. That is Japanese. That is no other culture makes that, right? Like it doesn't come from anywhere else. You can't say it's something other than that. All right, so these were very intentional picks because there are things that have no plausible deniability. Even though there are some idiots on X that are still trying to create that plausible deniability, trying to say, well, you know, maybe there was like some fantasy equivalent of the Dutch just spontaneously invented the hard-shell taco, right? No, that's not how it is, right? And I mean, they knew that. They've picked some of the things, because like, you know, if you pick like a wonton soup, you can say, well, that might be a wonton soup. It might be a pierogi soup or something. Like, who knows, right? Like, so they picked things. The person who made this piece of art, whose name I have not checked, or whose gender identity I've not checked, but whose political affiliation I'm 100% certain of, that person did not pick foods that could be waved away. They picked the most intensely cultural identifiable foods they could think of and forced them on that table, put them there specifically to create an anachronism. And so, like, this leads us to have to ask, well, what is an anachronism? Because there are people that were then saying to me in this thread, they were saying, well, but, you know, tomatoes are an anachronism. And, well, yeah, tomatoes, that's technically true, of course. If you look at the academic definition of an anachronism, it is something that is placed in a location or an image or what have you that does not belong in that context. It doesn't belong generally we're talking about a chronological anachronism in that it is something that is outside of its time, right? So if you have, you know, like a dinosaur in the middle of a World War I battle, that is anachronistic. And it creates this sensation in you that, well, you know, that's got to be wrong, right? But, you know, there can be differences that are not so nice. So maybe somebody's trying to fake a Civil War photograph, like, you know, those black and white photographs that Civil War officers took, and someone else who's kind of keen will like take a look and they will say, no, hang on, this is a fraud because this guy is wearing a cavalry saber that was not introduced until 1915, right? Or something like that, right? So the anachronism, well spotted, can end up demonstrating whether some form of media is authentic or not. It can serve to determine counterfeits. But that's not, in general use, the utilitarian purpose of the utilitarian function of an anachronism. So an anachronism can't really be viewed that way when we're talking about the experience of enjoying media. Because there, what matters is not, you know, not all anachronisms are equal, right? There are anachronisms that will work differently from others. And the first thing is that it will depend on the effect it has on the experiencer. So that in practice, what is an anachronism is something that knocks you out of a sense of immersion in the media you are partaking in. So if you're looking at a movie and you're watching this and it's like, you know, it's a movie, I don't know, it might be a historical movie. And then suddenly there's something that happens that's completely out of whack from the rest of it, right? Like it's something, I don't know, Donald Trump walks through the front of the camera, and it's like supposed to be a movie about the Civil War, the U.S. Civil War, right? And then it doesn't make any sense, right? And so that jars you when you might have been completely drawn into, like, you know, Gone with the Wind, the remix, and suddenly there's like a Trump reference there, and that jars you, right? Knocks you out of this sense that you are, you know, trying to immerse yourself into the place and the time of this medium that you're looking at, right? And this is the same when you're looking at a comic book, a video game, or an RPG. You know, so in an RPG, you can have, I mean, because another argument that people are making, well, what does it matter? You know, there's a game where there's like dragons and there's people that are casting spells and there can be all kinds of crazy stuff, so why not? It's like, yeah, there can be. That can be called Gonzo Gaming, where there could be a bunch of weird stuff. But then there has to consistently be a bunch of weird stuff. It has to be a consistent anachronism, or a consistently anachronic nature to the world. In a world where you can't understand anything, you can't expect anything, because there can be unexpected stuff that just pops up. right? So like in my last session of the Last Sun, which the audio will eventually be up on Bill the Elf's channel that we did yesterday, the player characters were supposed to stop this barbarian warlord, and the barbarian warlord was basically Joe Rogan. And so this was the joke, right? And that was, and everybody thought it was really funny. I think everybody enjoyed it. Certainly, I know a few of the players enjoyed it more than others. But that's okay in the world of the Last Sun, because that is a Gonzo world. But even there, I tried to have. I have an explanation for everything that happens, and this guy wasn't literally Joe Rogan in this case, right? But he acted like it was so that was a meta thing that I did, and so that meta thing could have the risk of knocking people out of their sense of immersion, but in a game that is consistently Gonzo, it's not likely to. But if you're not running a Gonzo game, if that's not what you're doing, then no, it's not just anything goes. Right? There has to be reasons for why things happen. In fact, even in a good Gonzo game, like in Last Sun, I always try to have reasons for why things happen, even if my player characters never know why. And in a more conventional fashion, if you're playing a standard like D&D game, you need to be able to have a sense of reasonable expectation of what can and can't happen. Okay? So this context, it means that different types of anachronisms will have different levels of impact. Because if you, for example, some people are saying, well, yeah, the tomato, right? The tomato wasn't in the world before the Columbian Exchange. It wasn't in the old world before the Columbian Exchange. So there shouldn't be any tomatoes on the dinner table of a lord in a setting that is supposed to be like the 15th century. So first off, that really only applies to the real world, right? Because that's like if you're playing on Earth. Like, so obviously, yeah, if you're running Lion and Dragon in medieval England, there should be no tomatoes. That is correct. That is absolutely right. So that's first. But second, if you're running in a fantasy, like if you're on Westeros, which is sort of like medieval England, but it's not really, then that doesn't matter, right? Because that is not enough of an anachronism that it would disrupt anything. So, and if you're in a world that's just like a pure fantasy, if you're in the Forgotten Realms, it doesn't matter anyway, right? It doesn't matter either. But even so, the level of anachronism is going to be different if you're talking about having a tomato at the dinner table versus having some character in a setting with no guns going around and for some reason he's got an AK-47, right? That is going to create a totally different level of immersion breaking because of anachronism. Because if that's like, there's got to be a reason for that, and if that is just being done just because it is, then that shatters the sense of the reality of the world. And likewise, when you have this situation, a taco, a fully formed hard-shell taco, or a plate of sushi that has been perfectly made in a medieval context, that shatters the deal, right? It doesn't make any sense in the context of what you're expecting, because it's not just like, it's not just a plant from another place that normally wouldn't be there if it was actually the real world, because of the time period, like the potato or the tomato. It's more than that. In this case, what it is a complete cultural dish of a specific culture that has been put there in an environment that everything else, all the other cues of what you're seeing in the image, tell you is a different culture. In a period, in a time period based on the appearance and the technology that they have there, that would be medieval. Okay, so this is a period before the one culture would even have been contacted, and when the other one is much too far away to have had any contact. So there's a complete disconnect that happens there when you see that it breaks the sense of immersion. And there is also a more abstract level at which immersion, about which anachronism has differing effects. Because one thing is to be anachronic by accident. You know, I'm a historian, so I know all the little details about a lot of this sort of stuff of what is or is not historically accurate, right? But most of the times I don't really sweat it very much. But there might be some historians, professional or amateur, who do. There might be some that think, you know, oh, they've got full plate armor in a time period that would be early medieval. That doesn't make any sense, you know. Or why don't they have firearms by the time of the, you know, that they're wearing plate mail? Yeah, that sort of thing is, for some people, it's annoying, right? For them, I mean, it's annoying to see those anachronisms. But most people, even most historians, understand that most people don't know that, right? Like, so like, if you don't know that something's anachronic, the anachronic effect on you is zero, right? So like most gamers, if they saw a tomato on a table, at a dinner table of a medieval looking inn in some fantasy art, would not be affected in any way because they had no idea that tomatoes were only brought to the New World with Columbus, right? That it was after that there were tomatoes in Europe. So there was no tomato sauce in the Middle Ages. That's true. But the effect is still also probably going to be pretty small to you because you're not really going to care very much about that. So the more you are made to care, the worse the anachronistic effect is. So the next level is if someone goofs up, they do something stupid, right? If they make a mistake, or an accident, let's say, where they've done something anachronic, and it's not, you know, but it's not meant to be an intentional offense. It's just something that they've done that's stupid, and so that'll usually annoy a good number of people who are engaging in the media. But, you know, people might be willing also to overlook it. It depends on how tolerant you are of this sort of thing. That would be the sort of thing, usually it would drive me absolutely nuts. You know, they would drive me crazy. And that's like happens to me a lot when I'm watching certain historical films that aren't quite historical. And so you have like some character that's supposed to be dead and they just live for no reason, or vice versa. Or they, you know, they have someone do something that wasn't the way it actually happened in real history, and I know this. That sort of stuff does get to me, I will admit, right? But I know that usually they're doing it just because, like, you know, they don't care enough to do all the detailed research. They just want to make a relatively good story, and you know, they know they have these famous characters, but they don't know exactly. You know, they're not going to go into more than a very superficial read of what the events actually were, and then they're going to dramatize it. And I get that. It's fair enough, right? But the worst kind of anachronism that can happen is an anachronism that is done with malicious intent by the creator as a way to attack the viewer. And that is what this art, and so much of the art in the New Player's Handbook and other main OneDnD books are. They're made to be an assault on the reader, to tell the reader, the D&D that you like is bad. This is the D&D that we will force you to like. This is what you're going to have to look at. And in fact, you know, like you could say, well, what does it matter? It's art. Well, the art defines, right? Like it defines, for people who are opening the book and looking at a player's handbook of D&D, the art there should be telling you, well, this is what D&D playing should look like, right? That's what it should say. That's what every manual is supposed to say. Every RPG manual is saying, well, if you're playing Lion and Dragon, it should look a little like this. You know, the art there is done to do that. It's to explain what it should look like. And the art is the most radically changed part of OneDnD versus the previous editions of D&D, including 5e. They have altered so much of the art into these pieces where people are just kind of hanging around and showing off their individuality and showing off their personality and showing off their sexuality and showing off their genderality and showing off how, you know, how totally aware they are of their own consciousness, you know, and that they have created a deep conception of change through time, like Kamala Harris. So it's hipsterism mixed, obviously, with intense levels of wokeism, right? The orcs are presented as nice family people who are, you know, they're probably Mexicans. You have the dwarves, instead of going to war with orcs, because they can't anymore, that would be genocide if they tried to hurt orcs. So instead, they're gay bakers, right? All of this sort of stuff that is being presented in the player's handbook is part of an agenda. And this one image is also just that, right? It's the forcing in of these diversity foods onto the table are themselves a message saying no matter what, you're never allowed to forget about the agenda we're imposing on your game and constantly will keep imposing on your game. Now, there have been some people, obviously, most of them wokeists, some of them maybe not, that are saying, well, you know, what does it matter, right? Why do you care, right? Well, that's always the argument that they say, and that's just the proof. The proof that they care is that they have to come on there and say, why do you care? Because if they really didn't care, if nobody were to care, then why would they be commenting, right? And then there are the ones that come on and what they say is something along the lines of like they say that you are not allowed. Why are you trying to determine what is the normal thing or the right thing to do with D&D? Like, and who are you to do this kind of gatekeeping? You know, like, what right do you have to gatekeep these people who are just playing? And I'm like, well, okay, first of all, this isn't people who are just playing. This isn't from I don't know what this guy is looking at or what these people, because I've had several people say this to me, right? Like, how dare you tell them how to play, right? Like, well, who the hell is them? Do you mean like the people that buy this book? Well, let me tell you, I'm not criticizing the people, I'm criticizing the product. The product has not been created by a bunch of friendly people who love D&D and want to be part of your family, right? The book has been created by a multinational corporation, one of the richest in the world, one that has occasionally been accused of horrible crimes, by the way. And this multinational has done this in order to create a product, but also to fulfill a particular agenda that has been imposed on them largely by a combination of government and private entities that have a list of demands of diversity, equity, and inclusion for investment to happen, either for corporate or for government sponsorship or for large investment group sponsorship, right? And in response to that, as much as anything else, certainly more so than the outcry of a few, communists that work at coffee shops, Wizards has gone very deep into, as in by orders from Hasbro, has gone very deep into the involvement of diversity officers. And they've said that every single word, in a RPG, any of their RPG products, any D&D book, will be reviewed not by one, but by like 3 diversity officers. It has to be approved by 3 different stages of analysis, and have the full support of the communist commissars to say that they're allowed to move forward. And if not, it has to be changed. And I believe the art is under the same similar kind of scrutiny. And so you can bet that this thing was set up with that in mind, with the idea. And the idea is, well, we have, at all times, if you're trying to get away from the pressure of these ideological fanatics, you are not allowed to do so. You're not allowed to hide anywhere. You're not allowed to hide in your hobbies. You're not allowed to hide in your family. You're not allowed to hide on the TV. You're not allowed to hide in a computer game. They will always try to enter and get present there and remind you. So you must constantly be reminded of the importance of their woke agenda, and that it must always be, at every second, you must be affirming and appraising, because silence is violence. You must be affirming and appraising their ideological agenda and position and saying, yes, this is a good thing. We must accept this is a good thing. If you don't, you will be canceled. And that's what this is. You're shown a picture. First of all, it's a crappy picture. It's clearly taken from stock art of people having a dinner there, because they have no good artists. That's also, compared to previous editions, this is just all terrible garbage. And then it's like, okay, there are people having a feast, maybe after an adventure or something, that's great. And then suddenly your attention must be drawn. And it's not like they just put it away, tucked it in a corner. The taco becomes a central part of the image, because the halfling or gnome or whatever the hell that's meant to be is using magic to bring it towards him, and he looks so happy that out of all of the foods, he's picked the Latino food, and that's the one that's the best. Right? So this is the message of the image, So this is just ridiculous. But I guess it was a good opportunity to give a good lesson of what anachronism is and why there is in fact a hierarchy. There are some things, a hierarchy. There are some things that are more anachronistic than others, in the sense of how they affect the viewer. And the worst one of all is when you try to forcibly ram in an ideological message that is not contemporary to the setting, but rather is contemporary to modern politics. And you force that down the throats of players. And I think that between that and the woes that they're having right now with D&D Beyond and stuff like that, I'm probably not going to do a video on that because I just don't care enough for it. I think that D&D might be finding itself being the one that ends up getting canceled. I question how it's going to go for them in terms of the. Well, I guess we'll know when we see how many. First guess will be how many pre-orders they actually get, and then second, of course, it'll be hard to tell for sure because they'll probably try to put the best face on it, right? But sooner or later, the truth will come out. Then the second will be when it'll be obvious. It'll be when the VTT comes up and whether it succeeds or fails. I guess that's everything for today. If you like this video, hit the like button, share it anywhere you think people find it interesting, share it anywhere you think people get pissed off about it. Excuse me. And be sure to check out all my products. You hit on the little more button there on your video, and you will see links to every one of my products, and you should check all of them out. Baptism of Fire, my best-selling game of the year, Lion and Dragon Star Adventure, The Old School Companion, The Invisible College, and especially go to the Red Room store and check out the Pundit Files, which are my newest fortnightly PDF serial. Every single issue has a different topic, so now there is, I think, 19 topics for you to choose from, and you can get all kinds. There's all kinds of stuff there, and every single one of them only costs $3.50. Okay, so if you can find someone to give you about $3.50, you can get one of the Pundit Files. That's everything for today. Currently smoking. This is a Lawrence Eddy Hawkbill, oversized, plus Argento Roots.